Hello again, welcome to the programme. I should say Happy New Year because this is our first show of 2022. We're sort of doing them as and when. We can drag some decent guests in off the street, as we have done tonight. We dragged them in from the stands and terraces, actually, because if recent times, and the pandemic in particular, have taught us anything, it's that sport is nothing at all without fans, without supporters. It's been applied mostly to football, but it applies across all sport, including to cricket. And this gentleman here to my right, who is lowering the average age in the studio, and we're extremely grateful to Chris Millard for that, from the England Cricket Barmy Army organisation. Welcome, Chris. It's good to see you. No shortage of topics. We'll sort of move across the Ashes series quite quickly when we come to you. These two guys here represent supporters on both sides of Sheffield. On my far side here, delighted to welcome Ian Bennett from the Sheffield Wednesday Supporters Trust, one of quite a number of directors there steering that organisation. And here, Wayne Shortland, who's chairman of the newly relaunched Sheffield United Supporters Association.
Right, yeah.
Now, I mean, there are issues to address at both clubs, Sheffield United and Sheffield Wednesday. It's a time when the season's on a knife edge, really, for both. We'll come to you for that. But first of all, when we talk about supporters and, you know, keeping it real, you're a party animal. Aren't you, Mr. Millard? Or at least James Gregg tells me that you are.
Wouldn't like to let him tell you any secrets. But
Your members are party animals, a lot of them, aren't they? Barmy
mixed
Army
bag,
members.
mixed bag to be honest. There are some that like a party, but there are some cricket anoraks as well that like to travel and be active supporters, not passive.
Right. Well, parties are kind of in season at the moment for topics generally, and I could not believe my eyes when I saw that story the other day, about the police descending on an after-match drinks session, shall we call it, and why not, between the victors Australia and the vanquished England, one drowning their sorrows, the other drinking to celebrate, and the police turn up and sort of tone it down a bit. Is that a story?
Absolutely not. It's not the biggest party story of the week, put it that way.
It's certainly not. It's certainly not. But that's traditional, isn't it? At the end of you hope it happens, don't you?
Yeah, it's nice to see the best players from both sides having a drink and chatting about the series. Look, they've been locked up for 3 months. If they're not allowed a drink at the end of a hard-fought series in private, then I don't know who is, really.
No, and I think the drink was more necessary for Jimmy Anderson and Joe Root than it was for the Australians, don't you?
It's been a tough time. Yeah, they've had a really tough time. So I hope they had some light relief in the form of lager or whatever else they were drinking. But I hope they enjoyed it.
Yeah, sometimes we forget that sports personalities are human beings, and we forget as well that football supporters are human beings, the way they're treated at times. Ian Bennett, do you reckon?
Very much so. I think people forget about how much, and we had a discussion earlier about how much supporters put into the economy. That happens with the Barmy Army travelling abroad, happens with us going away every week or every other week, pubs, restaurants, even travelling down the motorway and having a meal in a cafe or a motorway station. The money that must change hands every weekend is scary. I think supporters are forgotten about. Massive part of every club, as we've seen with the pandemic when nobody's been there. I think it's important that the organisations that the supporters are beginning to come to the fore again are seen as a catalyst for good, rather than being seen as an enemy of the club or whatever, and that goes across all the sport.
Yeah, dare I mention admission prices as well. You kind of shaking your head about that. We might come to that later. Wayne Shortland, Sheffield United Supporters Association. United really haven't, it strikes me, been represented by supporters in any kind of strength for quite a long time now.
No,
is that recognised?
Yeah, it is recognised. It's recognised by the supporters and it's recognised by the club as well. We've been bubbling away in the background for a good few years for various reasons. It's not happened, but it's happening now. I've had many supporters come to me saying, what's happening with the club? why aren't the club talking to the fans? Why aren't the fans talking to the club? So hopefully we're going to right that wrong.
You're going to have a presence at a time when I think if there's a criticism above all criticisms that's directed at the Sheffield United hierarchy is that there appears to be a disconnect, and maybe there's something in common here with the Sheffield Wednesday supporters' complaints about their own, a disconnect between the football club and the supporters. Is that fair comment, and is that a void that you're trying to...
That's a void that we are going to fill. We're going to have an active voice and we're going to have regular meetings with the club.
Have they promised that?
We are talking about it now, yeah.
So they've been receptive to...
Oh, yeah, I've actually spoke to the club about what we're going to do, and yeah, we are now affiliated to the club. We're not the official supporters club, but the club do recognise us, which is a step in the right direction.
I totally agree. Who at the club have you been in dialogue with so far?
John Garrett, Stephen Bettis. So yeah, so
Right.
it's all good. It's really good at the moment.
So there's a platform for you, and I noticed a quote on your relaunch that you're aiming to work closely with the football club, mostly on off-field issues, but that you were looking to be a critical friend.
Critical friend.
When necessary.
Yeah, because if we've got anything to say to the club or the supporters aren't happy, we'll tell the club straight.
Yeah. The one thing here is that you're seeming to sort of get into a dialogue with the club, and I think maybe, is it fair to say Sheffield Wednesday Supporters Trust would wish to be in a closer dialogue with...
Very, very much so. I think at the minute they're excluded from the engagement panel. I think the people that are on the engagement panel are Wednesday supporters, but they're not as, shall we say, vociferous as we could be as a trust. I think we're ignored as a trust, and I can't figure out the reason why, when there's so much intelligence and knowledge on there. The people that are involved in it have got a lot of football background. For instance, one of the advisors, Chris Turner, who's ex-Wednesday goalkeeper, a lot of experience in running clubs. There's solicitors, there's business people, all people that could offer good advice with the right engagement. And I think sometimes, as was said, if you're critical, I think they're seen as an enemy of the club. I think one of the weaknesses of Mr. Chancery at Hillsborough is he doesn't really want to engage. He wants to run it as a dictatorship, if you like. And the lack of communication between the supporters is ridiculously bad. And all that creates for me is a rumour mill. And as we'll probably touch on, we take over rumours and everything. Without the correct information, I think people make their own stuff up. And it's ridiculous that, that there's a disconnect there when people want to be constructive and not destructive and want to have, dialogue with it. And again, we go back to the fact that with the heart and soul, really the people who are running both the big clubs in Sheffield are just custodians of something that belongs to the fans. They might own it, but all they're doing is running the club for us, and they don't include us in it.
You're nodding, you share that concern?
Yeah, I share that concern. I mean, we're fans, we're not going anywhere. No. But obviously the owners could do.
Yeah. OK, well, we'll talk about your specific concerns and how you'd like them to be addressed as we go along. We're slightly unbalanced here. If James Gregg had been here, we'd have had a 2-2 draw between the Blades and Owls, with me being an abstention, being a Chesterfield supporter. But actually, we're slightly loaded in favour of S6 here tonight, aren't we?
We are, yes. For my sins, I do prefer the blue and white stripes in Sheffield.
Right, for your sins, have you? What's your observations on the way where the club is at the moment? Obviously, you've got hopes of promotion.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly sad, to be honest. The way things seem to be going so well and on a high in the Carlos days, and if the whole final had gone the other way, who knows where would have been and what would have happened. But I think, like most Wednesday fans, feel Chancery's intentions were in the right place. And then the downward spiral started, and it seemed to unravel pretty quickly into a pretty sorry state of affairs, what it is now. But I think they'll still steal the playoffs this year.
You do? Well, if last Saturday's performance is any guide, when I had the pleasure of covering it for Sky, the 4-2 victory is any guide, they can do it. I mean, playing like that, they could still be top two, in my opinion. You'll have been there. You'll have seen it, Ian. You've been for your sins a season ticket holder since 1969.
That's correct.
So I'm not sorry for you.
Family again, granddad, father. Ex-shareholders, regional shareholders. I had some shares in the 70s. We've been involved in the club for so long. I chose as a kid to stand on the cop and buy a season ticket. I've been there every season since. Home and away. I've missed one game this year due to a wedding. I'll not forgive them. Yeah, so that's it. And I think that kind of loyalty, I think I spoke to you, Alan, and said, if that was me going to watch the opera, at the Lyceum, or they give you a place for life if you'd spent that money. I think Chansiri, I were at a meeting with him, and he was saying that the fans don't want to put anything into the club. Well, ask me how much I've spent. Yep. You know, that's the thing. And I think you get that with all football fans, as we were talking earlier. And I think to a point, it's same with the cricket guys. Yeah, they go along for a party, but they're there to support them. The money that they bring to the economy is ignored. And I think that's a big thing, and why supporters should be included a lot more in the decision-making processes across the board in all sport, in any professional sport, and it just doesn't seem to happen. They don't want to know.
We're going to come to you on specifics at both sides of Sheffield in a minute, but in cricket, the big issue, I suppose, is Test cricket and the neglect of it, or the lack of prioritising of Test cricket. Is that an argument that you agree with from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's played out in real time. Everyone's been able to see the terrible defeat we've had in Australia, and people have now seen that the fact that the focus from the ECB has been the white ball game, and we did win the World Cup in 2019, so we can't be too greedy. However, you look at the Test format, it is the purest format, but you see there's so much support for that format on social media across the board, really, and like we just mentioned, that fans are really the blueprint of the game, and the Test game especially, with so many people travelling overseas to watch a game. If we go to Barbados for a week, there's $80 million in circulation into Barbados economy for that week. So it really is a huge part of the calendar, touring and going on tour to watch Test cricket specifically. So
you suggested in sort of idle chat before we came on air that you'd have swapped the Ashes defeat gladly for the World Cup win. Yeah. And I said to you, I'm an old-fashioned traditionalist, and I certainly wouldn't. So you can't have one without the other, can you, really?
No, you can't. You can't. I didn't say it gladly.
No, you didn't. I misquoted you, sorry.
No, but
you would swap it.
But I think it was so good for the sport. You saw the interest in cricket in 2019 was up there. It was on the front page of every paper. It was all over the place. Cricket was right front and centre when it was the summer, and it was great for the game. But now you see how badly it's potentially affected the Ashes and where the Test team's gone. You hope for a little bit of reform into 2022, and hopefully Ruti will lead us to the Ashes in 2 years in England.
Yeah, we'll come to Ruti later in the show. We both know him. You know him better than I do, but we both do know him. Yeah. And it's more accessible, I suppose, the one-day game to all ages, and the coverage it's getting. Yeah. But we need to address the balance. Right, talking of balance. So, Wayne, what would be your main off-field concerns, and what are the things that you would like to bring in this dialogue with Sheffield United? Yeah.
I think first and foremost, a supporters club or association is more than that. We need to be concentrating on other things away from the club, like food banks, the local community, anti-knife crime, all that. And also, on top of that, you've got safe standing, you've got policing and stewarding, the local residents, you know, people who live around the ground, and businesses all need to we need to have dialogue with them.
You're talking about heart and soul, really, and certainly in the Kevin McCabe years, I thought Sheffield United really did have a massive heart and soul in the community.
Yeah.
It probably would be unfair to say that the current hierarchy haven't measured up to that, because they haven't got that affinity with the football club in the area that Kevin McCabe had, for instance, have they?
Yeah, to some respect, I do agree with you, but I think that's where we step into to fill that void, to make that link between supporters, the local community, the food banks, the policing and stewarding, make that link between those and the club.
And you also had a chairman there who, at the unveiling of Paul Heckingbottom, suggested that he wasn't interested in football. How did you take that comment?
It would just it's difficult, you know what I mean. It is difficult at times, but whether he meant it like that is
no. But hopefully he can step into that gap and bridge that gap and maybe build an interest in football.
That's right,
if it isn't there,
and that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we want to do.
And you've tried, I think. I mean, I know that Chris Turner's tried to open dialogue with Dapon Chansiri, and certainly many others have. Are you any closer?
There were some moves at the beginning of this season, I think, but it seems to be a brick wall type situation unless you say to the guy, you agree with him, yeah. And I don't know if that's a cultural thing, if it's the way he's always run his businesses, and the difference is, again, it is a business, but this is our club that they're running. The same feeling you get from across the city. The disconnect is wrong. They should include us and include everybody. I think that there's certainly moves towards it. Whether that's far enough or not, well, I definitely think not.
I'd imagine, playing devil's advocate with you, that Dapon Chansiri looks and thinks, well, everything's critical. I've put X millions into this football club. What do people want? Every time I look at a website or go on social media or whatever, I see I'm getting slagged off. Yeah. So I'm going to retreat into a corner and put my tin hat on.
I think very much so, and I've a slightly different take on that than a lot of the fans. And I think the guy's put a lot of money into the club. It's the way that people have advised him. Probably the advisors need more criticism. They were heading in the wrong direction. The links to certain people, such as Doyen Sports, when there were players coming in on silly wages, that just ridiculous signings. And he's took advice and it's gone the wrong way. Straight away under Carlos, everybody liked the way they play at football. You think it's a breath of fresh air. I think I agree that when it started going wrong, it's gone wrong in a big way. And that is where I agree with the United side, that you should drag us in as supporters and ask opinions.
There's a lot of constructive advice there, and I'd imagine that if there was a closeness between the chairman and the football fans, they would build a relationship where it could be more cordial.
That's right. Exactly.
Than it is at the moment.
Exactly. We'll take the season ticket fiasco. I'm sorry, Alan. Just while it's on my head, we know that it's a cash grab. There's a cash flow problem there. Everybody's gone through it in the football world, probably in all the sporting world, right? Instead of coming out and discussing things with the fans and saying, look, we need some money. Is there any way that you can help us or give some input? They go to people just before Christmas. It shows a lack of understanding about the area, about the finances, about people's living standards. And people have probably gone out there, borrowed money to buy season tickets at the tightest time of year, and then to come back and say, no, there's no increase in price afterwards. It's obvious that the cash we needed for cash flow, probably just to pay the wages, but why not come out and you don't have to give business sensitive information, be honest and include people, because I'm sure everybody at Hillsborough would say, yeah, of course we will. If we can.
I think there'll be a lot of goodwill to Dapon Chansiri, even now,
yes,
clubs,
I agree,
with that kind of approach. But in part two, we'll come to the gossip, if you like, speculation that there might be, or that Mr. Chansiri might be open to a takeover. I think we're fumbling in the dark on that, because none of us, or nobody I know, really knows the answer to that or not. But I'll throw that to Ian. and also a bit of gossip about who actually might be in the market for Sheffield Wednesday if they go on sale. Plenty of cricket topics. I'm not sure how badly your business has been affected by the Ashes, and more on United as well. Do rejoin us after the break in a couple of minutes. See you then.